I'd have a microphone up here. Okay, did I tell you there'd be a written test today? I forgot to tell you that. You'd all pass, wouldn't you? Yes, sir.
Hey, Ron, I'm looking on page 97 down at the bottom there where it calls for the signature of the optionor, optionee, and you have the seller on both lines.
97 calls for, no. You know what? No, it is correct the way it is. The buyer does not sign the notice of real estate option agreement, only the seller. So that is a place for two sellers to sign, although Frank Seller is not going to sign twice. Frank Seller will sign one, Mary Seller will sign the other.
You have option or not, which is it?
It's option or. Oh, it is both, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
It shouldn't be. Shouldn't be. Both of them should be option or. The buyer does not sign the notice of real estate option agreement to be recorded.
Stephanie.
Both of them should be option or.
Ron,
And Frank should be Mary on the bottom one.
is there a spot on there for us to sign as well?
Huh?
Both the optionor, the seller, and the optionee, us, have to sign.
Let me go back to the top and see. It says the optionor for in consideration of the sum of $10 and other good value consideration and hand paid at the before. I don't think so. I mean, I don't want to have to study this thing, but I think this is only something the optionor signs, which is the seller.
No. I think both, it's a lot more stronger if you sign it and the seller.
Nope, disagree with you.
Okay.
Only the seller signs a deed, and we don't need the buyer's permission for the seller to create a cloud that the buyer can record on their title. And you know what?
But you're the
You
buyer.
are in doubt, just ask your attorney. But I believe that there should be no place for the optionee to sign that. Okay. Anybody else?
Ron, on the Axe deal,
Yep.
you said it's optional to do a title search.
It is optional, but I sure prefer you do it.
Would you wait till once you get the
As soon as the agreement is signed by the seller, you order title search.
okay,
Not until. Get an agreement signed, then order title search.
okay, you okay?
And that should only take a day or two. And then you'll know. Last thing you want to do is go find some tenant buyer and they bring you $10,000 and you put them in the house, and unbeknownst to you, the seller, both sellers haven't even signed the title, and there's some cloud on the title, or there's some mess, and the seller can't sell to buyer when they're ready to buy. I don't want that to happen. Even though I've got general releases, I still don't want that to happen. Yes?
I just want to make sure I understand this. Would you ever buy subject to and then lease purchase it to a tenant buyer?
I do it all the time.
Okay.
I
So
absolutely would.
when you do that, do you actually execute the contract to buy subject to with the seller before you find a tenant buyer?
In that particular case, yeah. Well, I may have a buyer's list, understand, but I don't plug the buyer into the house till I get a contract with the seller. And you're right, I get a purchase and sale agreement where I'm taking over the debt subject to, and then I may go choose to find tenant buyer right then and there, which means we contact our buyer's list and try to plug somebody into the deal.
So you have that 3-month, there's no payments until 3 months.
Yes.
But if it takes you 4 months or 5 months, which I know it wouldn't take you, but it might take me, I just have to risk making that payment for 2 months.
That is correct. If you
Okay.
agree to make a payment 3 months from now, that's what you should do and be prepared to do. But I can tell you right now, if it takes you 3 months to find a tenant buyer, we better go back and look at what you're doing to find them. So we better get to work showing you how right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, because it does not take 3 months to find a tenant buyer for any house anywhere in America unless there's something bad wrong with that house or bad wrong with that area, or unless you're screwing up the process. Yes, sir.
On a seller-held mortgage,
Yes.
when they record the mortgage, how does that actually get done? Is that through the attorney?
The
or-
attorney handles all of that, the attorney records everything, the attorney creates the documents. You sit there, try to stay awake, and sign what you're told to sign. You can do that, right, Bob? Okay. However, it is incumbent upon you to read the documents before the closing, to look for things that were left out or put in and should not be in or should be taken out. And that's where you come back to this book and you look through the things that I suggest you do and see if it complies. For example, he might have put the due on sale clause in there inadvertently because his legal assistant just, that's just automatically, that's the forms they pop out. So they got to intentionally take that out to comply. And then there's the late penalty stuff, which is different when I'm buying than when I'm selling. When I'm buying, I prefer no late penalty in the note. When I'm selling, I got a 10% after 5-day late penalty in the note. So it's also why you guys need a mentor. Your mentor will gladly look at these documents. They will not write your contracts. And if they do write them, I want to know about it. Because they will be fired. But they will look at your contracts. They will give you their opinion. They're not, and you won't get an invoice for it. And they'll try to look for the things that will trip you up and save you a lot of grief. By the way, how many mistakes do you got to correct to easily justify the cost of a mentor, just for the record? Maybe one? All right, do I have a question back there, John? Is that a no? Where's the mic? Anybody else? Yes. Up. Now without a mic. Okay?
On a sandwich lease or when you're doing a lease option,
Yep.
let's hypothetically say you get a property under contract, you get your tenant buyer in there. Fast forward 2 years down the line.
Yep.
The tenant buyer is ready to purchase the property.
Yes.
And let's say you did an agreement with the seller that you're going to give him $8,000 and then you pay off the balance at the time.
Yes.
What does that picture look like at the end? Are you going back to the seller so then he does a purchase contract? Like what happens at the end?
All right, I'm in this as a sandwich lease,
Right.
right? Okay, that's a good question. And that's exactly what I would do most of the time. I'd go back and just create a new purchase and sale agreement between the seller and the buyer because I'm not in the chain of title. And if they're going to go get a loan, they're going to check the title. So let them check the title, find out the seller's in it. And then anything above what I agreed to pay the seller, I will show on the HUD-1 as a fee or a second mortgage or whatever.
All right.
I'm going to collect the difference on the HUD-1.
So then, 'cause I know you were talking about this yesterday. Am I having this conversation, or are you going to have the conversation with the seller when you're signing this that, hey, when this guy cashes out, you know, I'm going to get X amount above, we're not going to have any problems?
That conversation should be had with the seller.
Okay.
I wished I could tell you that it always is had with the seller, but probably not,
Okay.
because I'm not the one talking to the seller nowadays.
Okay. But a good conversation to have.
It's a good conversation to have, and it's one that I would most certainly have.
Okay.
I mean, I'm clear on my intent. I'm going to lease option this house from you, and sooner or later, we're going to cash you out, and when we do, I'm going to get everything above what you're owed, and I don't want any grief from you. But, you know, that doesn't mean they won't give you grief necessarily. But I have my rights too. Right here. Look at John run.
Run, John, run.
Ron, you say you disguise your fee as a payoff of a second mortgage. What in case the seller or the potential buyer wants to see documentation of that payoff? What kind of paperwork could you produce?
I don't have to produce any documentation to the seller of any payoff. It just shows on the HUD-1. They know they're not getting it. They don't care. Call it anything you want. You can call it an option fee if you want. Just don't call it commission.
Okay.
Call it whatever you want. Call it whatever your attorney says to call it. How about that? Is that good advice? Call it what your attorney says to call it. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Okay, if you're doing a sandwich lease and you've got the property and you're selling it, you've lease purchased this property to a buyer. The buyer put a payment down. When they go to purchase that property, then according to the agreements that we have now, they can't show that deposit as being part of the down payment.
They can't on an axe deal unless you arrange it that way, yes. But I'm telling you right now, I'm getting to that later.
Okay,
So
okay.
just hold that question because I actually have the language in here and everything for you.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on, can we? Let's get a little selling in before we go to lunch on page 106. How many of you are concerned about selling these properties once you get them under control? Oh, right, 2 of you, sure. And the rest of you are not the least bit concerned about it, right? All right. Now, I'm sitting here looking at the Foleys up front here, which I worked with for 3 months, 3 very, very long months. Actually, it went by like that, the truth. They are buying a property for cash that they got out of the MLS, and I'm telling you, my advice to them was, because they're both busy, my advice to them was, let's go and get the property bought and then renovate it, if that's what you want to do, and then just list it with a realtor and let them sell it. And for them, I think that's the best advice that I could give them. Because A, I knew that they mentally didn't want to handle the process of selling the property. And B, I knew they were too busy. And plus they were rather new at it, and it would take a lot longer, I think, to get it sold. So it is still the best advice that I could give them. And in fact, I have a property right now that we bought, that I renovated, that is listed with a realtor. In fact, I have a contract on it from a realtor right now to sell it to a qualified cash buyer. I could also point out my friend Sean Leonce, who of course is a master student, Platinum Inner Circle member last year, doing pretty big business up in the DC market, and nets pretty close to 7 figures, if not more than 7 figures right now, just simply buy, rehab, and sell. Sean's whole business is buy the properties cheap, renovate them nicely, stage them, and list them with a realtor. That's all he does. That's all he does, and he's netting 7 figures. Now he's dealing in a higher price product, not that higher. His properties run anywhere from $250 to $500 in that area. In fact, we did a boot camp up there in Hyattsville, Maryland, and we made 16 offers, got 7 of them accepted. And not one of them had less than an $80,000 spread in it between what we agreed to pay and adding the repair costs on there, what it would sell for. And those went to the students. So there's nothing wrong, if you really want this to be a turnkey operation, if you're going to sell to people who have to qualify for a loan, to just let the realtors go find them for you, as long as you're willing to give up the commission. And if you're buying them properly, you can easily give up the commission, because there's plenty left over. And that takes all the grief out of selling. As long as you have prepared yourself for the holding process and are not backed into a corner if the thing doesn't sell in 30 minutes. If you've got a private loan on it, the payments have to be made. You will have to account for that going into that, unless you have the interest accruing, like you should. If you've got a private loan, the interest should be accruing, so you're not making payments if your exit strategy is intent to cash out. But then that's that side of the business. What we're talking about in this class is how to sell to owner-occupants only and not run them through the loan process, and they are not qualified. People who are qualified are going to go get a bank loan. People who are not qualified are going to fall into what we've been doing this weekend, and I will tell you, they are 10 times easier to sell to than the people that are qualified. Plus, there's 5 times more of them. Less than 18% of your market can qualify for a loan right now. And that's a small pool. The rest of them cannot qualify, meaning they cannot go to the bank and get a loan. They've lost their credit or some other reason that they can't qualify. which leaves a huge marketplace out there for you to plug buyers into, to properties that they can walk right in, hand you a few $1,000s, and then voila, we're done. The advantages you offer to the marketplace are just mind-boggling, and you're the gatekeeper. You own the toll booth. And in this case, it cost you nothing to build the toll booth. You take possession of these beautiful properties and you put them on the market and you attract people that cannot qualify by your advertising. And your process is just very simple. Find out who's got enough money to satisfy you and who can afford the payments on the property, and you're in. Compared to what the realtor's got to do to sell my house or the Foley's house or Sean's house. They got to find somebody who can pay cash. They got to get them qualified. It's going to take 45 days to get my buyer approved for a VA loan. 45 days just to cash me out. And then, of course, I agreed to pay 4% of the closing costs, or up to $4,000 in their closing cost to get the property cashed out. And the only reason that I want this property cashed out is because I've got too much cash invested in it, and it's a terrible lease option candidate because of the amount of cash I have invested in it. The rate of return would not be very good. I would be better off buying 2 different houses with the same amount of cash and have almost twice the rate of return on those 2 houses and more profit spread in it if I did get cashed out later. And if you do your own math, guys, when you're paying cash for houses, the cheaper ones are the one that's going to get you the biggest rate of return, not the most expensive ones. So for the sake of today, selling houses is pretty pathetically easy if you want to know the truth. Everybody's sitting around wondering whether they can sell the houses when in reality you're not selling houses. You're leasing them to people with money. There's no banks. There's no qualifying. You are the committee. You're the one that decides. It's you and you and you, based on a very little bit of criteria that you have to collect. You literally can meet your prospect and make a decision the same day whether you want them or not, which of course does not happen in the world of banks. If you want them, 2 to 3 days later, they're in the house if it's vacant. Finding these people is not difficult at all because of the message you're going to put out to the marketplace to attract them. And that message is hope. Come to me if you can't qualify. We know you're not a miserable human being because your credit sucks. We can put you in a home quickly without banks, and you can. So there's really only 2 ways you're going to sell all these deals that we've been talking about all day yesterday and today, and that is on a lease purchase or with owner financing. You're not cashing out of these deals, at least not now. And maybe not ever. Because when you do cash out, you just killed the goose that lays the golden eggs. The minute you close the sale, there's no more money coming in monthly, there's no more coming in on the back end, and there's no deposits you're going to get on the front end, and there's no loans getting paid down, there's no wealth building created, and now I just got to take the money and pay the taxes on top of that. As long as you don't sell it, there are no taxes to be paid. The goose keeps crapping golden eggs, and you're doing nothing to deserve the money, and the wealth grows because the debt gets paid down, and hopefully the property goes up in value. By the way, will properties go up in value? Of course they will. Of course they will. We're in a hiccup right now, but as the big picture goes, it's a very small hiccup for a very short period of time, and they will start going back up. You mark my words, when interest rates go up, property values will start going up. But we got a mess to clean up first. We got a lot of properties to get out of here. We got a supply and demand issue, but it'll turn around. You want to know how long it's going to take to turn it around? Who wants to know when the recession will be over? Who wants to know? Well, I know the answer. The answer is the recession will be over in 2 years, 8 months, and 4 days at 5 o'clock p.m. Well, my answer is as good as anybody else's, isn't it? Huh? Yeah, it's worth as much as anybody else's answer. The truth is, I don't know. Nobody knows, and I don't care what they say. They still don't know. The recession is not going to be over, in effect, until we clean up this housing. You cannot get out of this recession as long as the housing market sucks. Cannot do it. And as long as we got millions of houses that haven't even been foreclosed on yet, plus the ones that are already in the system, plus the ones that are already owned, the housing market is going to suck. And nobody can change that, only time and the cleansing effect and buyers coming in and buying up the product and putting it back into the marketplace. That's going to take a few years. Okay, a few years. That's great. In the meantime, a lot of people lost their credit that still want to live in a home that are looking for you. So all we got to do is let them find us and then offer them a product that they can be satisfied with. And that is not hard. And today, it costs almost nothing on top of that. Man, when I was growing up, we actually had to do work and spend money to find these people. Today, we can sit on our fat ass and get them off the computer and get them to come to us and never leave our house. It's just so much easier today than it was back then. So we're going to go through this process, but I can tell you, it is not complicated.